Hello, my name is Friday Salmon Mjage from Edukea Tanzania. Welcome in this session to proceed with our topic, which is the threats to the world peace after Second World War. On the last session, we ended on the effects of the Cold War. So now we are going to see the law between the Eastern and the Western blocs after 1953. So what is the law? A law refers to the situation in which the relation between two hostile countries namely USA and Russia become friendly. It means that a law is just like l'entente, a French word, l'entente, or to something to be relaxed or to regain on the friendship. It means that refer to the situation in which the relation between the two hostile camps or blocks, which were USA and the USSR, became friendly again. So after 1953, the relation between the Soviet Union and the USA had improved. However, in October 1962, the relation was very worse following Cuban Missiles installation by the USSR. So after 1953, the relationship or relation between USA and USSR become at a good pace or improved. However, in October 1963, following the Cuban Missile installation, the relation become worse or become bad. So, and that Cuban missile installation was done by USSR that increased the hostility again, or the door was frozen again. So the missiles were withdrawn by Nikita Khrushchev, the USSR president, leading to the continuation of a war between the USA and USSR until 1980, when the Cold War was frozen again. It means that the Cuban missile, which was installed by USSR in October 1963, was withdrawn by Nikita Khrushchev, the president of USSR, and led to the continuation of war between USA and USSR. But the war was frozen again during the 1980s. So let us see the reasons for a war between the Eastern and Western blocs after 1953. The first reason was the death of Joseph Stalin. This was the USSR president, but when it reached in 1953, that president was died. So, and that president was harsh and very negative in the USA bloc or in the capitalist bloc. So after his death led to the war between USA and the USSR. So you can see after 1953, the good relation between USA and the USSR became in a best condition. Another was the public pressure factor. This was due to the Americans to pressurize the existing government that the USSR is not communist, is not hostile as those leaders like Joseph McCarthy and Harry Truman was pronounced that USSR was very harsh and aggressive towards the capitalists or USA. So the public pressure to need the friendship or needed to end up the hostility between USA and USSR led to the war between the Eastern and the Western blocs after 1953. Another was the Sino-Soviet conflicts of 1916. This was the conflicts which were present between between China and the USSR, whereby China was suspecting USSR that supported the Indians towards the boundary conflicts with China. So that led to the Chinese to join with or to cooperate with the USA or capitalist bloc. So that led to the fear to those USSR that it can bring some problems to Soviet Union. So that led to the Cold War to get low, or the relation between Eastern and Western bloc to get low. So another was the need to reduce the risks of nuclear war. It means that the Cold War was led to the production of nuclear weapons that could lead to the eruption of nuclear war. So it means that those two blocs needed to reduce the occurrence of nuclear war due to the mass production of nuclear weapons, which could lead to the mass destruction to the world. So to fear that, they need to reduce the risk of nuclear war which could happen if those Cold War could continue. Another was the role played by the US President Eisenhower in 1954. This was the president of USA who declared that USSR need the friendship with USA or capitalist. So that president declared and pronounced it to the public that USSR needed the friendship again to remove all hostilities and the enmity which were present between USA and the USSR. So this was another factor for the war between the Eastern and the Western bloc after 1953. And another cause or reason was establishment of Austrain in 1962. This was a direct communication between the USA White House and the Moscow State House after the installation of Cuban Missile in 1963 by the USSR president. So this led to the war between the Eastern and the Western bloc after 1953. And the last reason was the need to reduce the overgrowing cost on the arms race. It means that those blocs, Eastern and Western bloc, were aiming at to reduce the overgrowing costs, because in production of those arms race and other dangerous weapons were consuming the high cost in production. So those blocks were wanted to reduce those costs which were being used, and they decided to invest those finance in other economic activities like in agriculture, industries, and the other activities like mining. So these were the reasons for a war between the Eastern and the Western bloc after 1953. So after seeing those reasons, let us see the reasons for thawing of Cold War between Eastern and the Western blocs was frozen again in 1918s. The reasons why thawing of Cold War between Eastern and the Western bloc was frozen or rebirth again in 1980s. The first one, or the first cause, was the occurrence of Iranian Revolution. It means that this was the revolution which took place when the Alan Alan Khomeini of the Islamic and the communist gang was led by the Ayatollah Khomeini, who overthrown the ruling government under Mohammed Reza Shah, who was supported by the USA to take over power. So that led to angered the USA, fearing that USSR could take the potentiality of USA in Iran, so led to the occurrence or frozen of Cold War between Eastern and the Western blocs. Another, it increase of the nuclear arms race. It means that the increase of production of arms race led to the frozen of Cold War between Eastern and Western blocs. For example, USSR introduced the nuclear weapons and then tested in Kazakhstan and Balapan and etc. While USA in reply in 1979 made the same. It means that those two blocks, Eastern and Western blocks, were competing in the production of arms race or nuclear weapons on defending themselves against the other. So those USSR and USA were producing various nuclear weapons, as USSR in 1979 introduced the nuclear weapons, which was then tested in Kazakhstan and Balapan and other areas of the world, while in USA did the same in that year. So that led to the frozen again of Cold War in 1918s. Another reason is civil wars in Angola, Nicaragua, and Salvador. For example, Agustin Neto, supported by communists, and Jonas Savimbi by USA in 1975. There were civil wars which were taking place in these nations, Angola, Nicaragua, and Salvador. These were supported by the two blocs, whereby, for example, in Angola, the Agustin Neto and the communists and the Jonas Savimbi and USA. So these were civil wars whereby Jonas Savimbi conducted the guerrilla war to overthrow the existing government, and Agustin Neto, who were supported by the communists. So those were the civil wars which were supported by those two blocs. And in Nicaragua, the USA supported the guerrilla war or guerrilla fighting, whereby the USA wanted that group which were supported by them to overthrow the existing government of which were supported by the USSR. So that led to the frozen again between Eastern and the Western bloc. Another was the question of Los Angeles and the Moscow Olympic boycott in 1980s. It means that there were boycotts which was going on, or which were conducted in 1980s, whereby in 1980s Moscow was preparing the Olympic in Russia, and the USA Olympic team was denied to participate in that Olympic or in that champion. And in 4 years later, USCLR team or USCLR Olympic team did the same. So this accelerated or increased the frozen again of Cold War between the Eastern and the Western blocs. But another was the rise of Ronald Reagan in 1981. This was the USA president who come up with the public pronounce or declaration that USCLR is the evil empire. He called USCLR as an evil empire. So that angered USCLR and led to the occurrence or the frozen again of Cold War between the Eastern Bloc and the Western Bloc. Another was the question of human rights. These were the declarations which were provided by various leaders. For example, in between 1977 and 1981, Jimmy Carter led the USA and declared that communism is against human rights. This angered the Soviet Union and Cold War frozen. It means that in between 1977 and 1981, Jimmy Carter declared that USCLR was against the human rights. After looking the factors for the thawing between the Eastern and Western bloc to be frozen again in Cold War, let us see how did the Warsaw Pact and NATO intensify Cold War. So before going there, let us see the definition of North Atlantic Organization Treaty and the Warsaw Pact. What is NATO? NATO, or North Atlantic Organization Treaty, is an intergovernmental military alliance signed on 4th April in 1949 and aimed at defending the member states when attacked by their enemies. So this NATO or North Atlantic Organization Treaty was aimed at defending the member states when they are attacked by their enemies, and it was included the intergovernmental. It means involving different governments of different nations. And on the other side, Warsaw Pact was the military defense treaty among the Soviet Union and the other 7 Soviet satellite states in the Central and the Eastern Europe. Means Warsaw Pact was another or was military alliance on the other hand between the Russia or Soviet Union and the other 7 Soviet satellites in the Central and the Eastern Europe, with the same aim of defending the member state when they are attacked with their enemies. And this Warsaw Pact was formed on 14th May 1955, while USA was formed in 4th April 1949. So this was the short definition about North Atlantic Organization Treaty and Warsaw Pact on USA and USCLR respectively. After seeing the definition, there is an exercise here which comprises 2 questions. Explain the factors for the entente between Eastern and the Western blocs. And the second one assesses the reasons for why the wing of Cold War between the Eastern and the Western bloc was frozen again in 1918. So until there, this is the end of our lesson.
tracks today.